anything else, can we move the timekeeper to where the attorneys can see?
I'm closing this shade just because I'm getting glare
Do
from
you want me to be on
the
this
window.
side? Because the witness is there?
Sure, whichever is.
What? All right.
Defense, would you like to give an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor, but first I would like to introduce myself and my co-counsel.
Please.
I'm Cora and my co-counsel, Kate Denier, and Jessica Finicario are here to represent BNN in this matter.
Proceed.
Yes, please. A judgment call. This is something that journalists are asked to make every single day. Because when breaking news happens, the people have a right to know. And it is the media's responsibility to tell them. Now, journalists are asked to use their professional judgment in order to determine whether stories warrant publication. And the very nature of breaking news requires journalists to make these judgment calls quickly. Now, on September 24, 2006, journalist Reagan Thomas was asked to make the greatest judgment call of his career. On the night of September 24, 2006, gubernatorial candidate Drew Walton was scheduled to debate Professor Lane Hamilton on the topic of gun control. The debate was heated, and after the debate, Professor Lane Hamilton exited the Midland Civic Center into the parking lot where Drew Walton was entering into her limo. At that time, Lane Hamilton made a reference to Drew Walton's father, and that's when that argument escalated. Drew Walton exited her car with a loaded semi-automatic firearm and turned the safety off. Moments later, Lane Hamilton lay dead on the ground in a pool of his own blood. Now, BNN was at the Midland Civic Center that night, and reporter Reagan Thomas heard 2 gunshots fired and raced outside of the Midland Civic Center into the parking lot, where the first thing he saw was Drew Walton hovering over Lane Hamilton's motionless body, which was covered in blood and had Drew Walton's own gun a mere few inches away. That's when Reagan Thomas began his investigation. Reagan will testify today to BNN's extensive investigation that went on at the Midland Civic Center, along with the reporting of Lane Hamilton's death. Reagan Thomas interviewed Mickey McQuiggan, the lead death scene investigator at the scene of the crime that night. He also interviewed Police Captain Vanunu, who specifically said that Drew Walton was being brought into the police station for further questioning. Reagan Thomas also spoke to Harley Kim, BNN's photojournalist, who was a witness in the parking lot when Professor Lane Hamilton was shot. Harley Kim will testify that Harley Kim told Reagan Thomas that he watched Drew Walton exit the car with a gun in her hand, and seconds later, Lane Hamilton was dead. Now, on top of these interviews, it was also known that the plaintiff had a short temper and a strong propensity for violence. At that point, Reagan Thomas called his superior, Kit Berkshire, the president of BNN. After careful review of the relevant witnesses and information available at the scene at that time, BNN made the judgment call that the shooting death of Lane Hamilton warranted publication. BNN made an honest, detailed presentation of the events and facts of that night, presented at the scene at that time. They were careful in making sure that the report was not certain. They used words such as appears, and Reagan Thomas used what he saw along with what others confirmed. The report made by BNN was justified due to the facts available at the time. The very next day, when new information came out and the police ruled that Professor Lane Hamilton's death a suicide, BNN issued a press release to ensure that all listeners would have the most recent information on this developing story. Not to say that they were wrong, but because they had new information and wanted that to be made clear to the public. Now, nevertheless, Drew Walton is here today claiming that BNN is the direct result of her being defamed and loss of her reputation. Now, in order to prove that that BNN is liable for defamation, Drew Walton would have to prove that the report was false, that BNN was malicious in nature in making the report, and that the report itself was a direct result of the defamation. The defense admits that Drew Walton will be able to do nothing of the sort. And we ask that at the end of this trial, you make a judgment call as Reagan Thomas did and find the same.